Hello, everyone, and welcome to OLA 2020. Thank you so much for joining us for the session, Impact of ICAP, How Public Libraries Can Shape Oklahoma's Future. I have with me Marissa Lightsey, who is the Executive Director of College and Career Readiness with the Oklahoma State Department of Education, Dr. Dawn Rowley, who is the Superintendent of Pryor Public Schools, and Dr. Amy Hudson, who is the Executive Director of Student Services at the Jenks School District. So I am this year's Chair-elect of the Public Library Division, and this program is sponsored by the Public Library Division. I would like to take this time to do a plug and encourage all of you to join. It's a great resource for all public libraries across the state. We talk about a variety of topics that pertain to all libraries. So anyway, I am very excited to moderate this session, and now I'm going to turn it over to Marissa.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Allison. I'm really excited to start the conversation about engaging community partners such as our public libraries in this conversation. Just to provide a quick overview of ICAP, or Individual Career and Academic Planning. This is a new graduation requirement that began with our 9th grade students for the 2019-2020 school year. Within that ICAP process, students were required to go through a 4-year career development process in order to provide them with the necessary skills and knowledge to prepare for life after high school. Those activities would include things such as taking career assessments every year, updating their education plan, making sure that their grades reflect their necessary progress or goals they've set for themselves, setting post-secondary career goals, also participating in an in-service learning or work-based learning environment at least once during their time in high school. Many of our high schools have taken this program and taken it far beyond the minimal requirements. And so I'm excited to hear from a few of our champions now in the state to learn how they have been able to use ICAP to transform their schools and support their students. So I guess really kind of my first question for the group, and Dr. Rowley and Dr. Hudson, is if you guys can just tell us a little bit about your schools. And I'll start with you, Dr. Rowley. If you can just tell us a little bit about your district and what makes it unique and sort of the area that you serve.
Well, we are a 5A school district, if you will. We have about 2,800 students. We're about 45 miles east of Tulsa. What we really have benefited from is we have the Mid-America Industrial Park, which is one of the largest land-based industrial parks actually in the country. Have about 81 industries, from everything from a lot of smokestack type manufacturing jobs all the way to, as many people know, we have Google now that has a data center here. So a large range of potential opportunities. And actually that's what started our kind of progression into the career pathway piece. We had a new, there's a governor appointed administrator to the Mid-America Industrial Park, and when David Stewart was appointed, he realized that we were in the center of the country. We had all kinds of resources. There's 2 power plants there, there's water, there's electric, there's all kinds of positives here, but they didn't have the workforce they felt like they needed. So basically he brought a lot of people together and started what you referenced a while ago as a community approach to how do we all work together? How do we align resources? How do we make sure that we're all working on the same page? And that really, the epiphany I had in doing that as I'm sitting across working with community leaders, plant managers, those kind of staff members. And the epiphany I had is that we had a lot of our kids that didn't realize what possibilities there were for them. They didn't know what jobs were available. They didn't know what they didn't know. And then we had a lot of kids that were just doing school. They had the social piece figured out. They had the academic piece figured out to get by. But they weren't connecting what they're doing now into what they're going to do potentially down the road. So it became a focal point of our district as one of the paradigms we operate off of is to actually have the career pathway experience. So that's began about 5 or 6 years ago. We've actually hired a college career coordinator for that role in itself. That way he drives making sure we're making those connections. And honestly, we already have had a really strong community support, but The library component is one, is the library is a hub of our community, and we're excited about the opportunities to expand our relationships there between our district libraries and the city county library here, because I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to leverage and increase the awareness for our kids and for even some of our adults that maybe haven't made a connection and they're in a job that maybe they could maybe move to another position or something, because they hopefully we find them training or give them some direction. So that's kind of a quick overview.
Perfect, thank you. So Dr. Hudson, can you tell us just a little bit about your district and what makes it unique?
Sure. I'm at Jinx Public Schools, and we are a suburb of Tulsa. Some of our district encompasses Tulsa and then the Jinx community. We have about over 12,000 students in our district, and just a great community. It has a small town feel, but obviously with 12,000 students, we are not small. So I think our journey for this career development actually started several years ago in working with our students at the high school level, but even before that, right? We bring careers in our elementaries on, let's look at the different careers our parents may have, and kind of started to have some of those conversations even with our youngest students as they journey through our district. But in our high school, we've had a program for many years on just looking at the courses that one could take, realizing that there are certain prerequisites you might have to have before you can take classes, and then where that could potentially lead you. And obviously with the vast array of clubs and organizations that we have, kids can get involved in many things. But in particular, the last few years, we have been focused on ICAP. And as you know, Ms. Marissa, we have been a part of the pilot program the last few years, along with prior, and have learned new things and have really grown. And so I think for us as a district, when we are faced with this challenge, it's looking at what do we do already that's going really well, and then how can we expand on that program. And so I think that's one of the things that we have done, and is looked at a couple of different ways that we can excite our students on potential jobs in the Tulsa area, and leveraging our community partners. And that could also be our community library, our city businesses, our city organizations and jobs. And so I definitely think what is available here, what's available now. We definitely will have students who go off to college, but we'll also have several that stay home. They may look at community college for training, working, and growing and developing. And so lots of different options. So definitely for the library piece, I think it's that connections. And I'll share later some ideas I have on that.
Thank you. That's perfect. So I want to go a little bit into sort of the challenges with connecting with community groups. You all mentioned that that's a really big part of ICAP, and it's been exciting, of course, to watch both of you grow in this work and how you've been able to support students. But I think it'd be helpful for the listeners to hear sort of some barriers that might exist for school districts to connect with community partners in ways that they may be able to help with that. So if, and I'm just going to open it up. Whoever wants to jump on first, you guys are welcome.
Ladies first.
Oh, thank you, thank you. All right, so one of the challenges is definitely going to be, who do I ask? Who do we have in our area? And so reaching out, we have a foundation, Jinx Public Schools Foundation, who works with our district. And so obviously a lot of business partners that are associated with that. So that is one of our first asks. Do we have people who are working within our district that are outside the district, right? Like a construction company or someone else that we can reach, that we can tap into, that we've already have established relationships? Are we going to some of those chamber events in our community and connecting with other individuals? And we have also hired someone to work with our college and career readiness program, somebody who can go out and meet with potential employers who can bring in speakers into our district. We also had a big conference, the senior conference, and we brought in several different people in our area, different leaders that talked about their job and how they got there, their steps in their journey, and very successful. We've had that for 2 years now, and it gets bigger and bigger, and our kids' excitement grows. But I think it is, how do you leverage your community? Who do you know in your community, and how do you get that message out there? And so I think that is the big part that we as educators, we are really good about knowing how to teach. We know the jobs within a school, but we may not have those same connections outside of our community. So that's where we rely on others, those other connections in our area to help us find those different careers that our kids could find out and learn more about. It's that awareness piece. If our kids don't know about them, they're not going to go do them. And so how can we get that information to them? And so that's where some of our individuals and our partners have been so critical. One event that we have had in our district also is called Breakfast with the Pros. And so we actually had different businesses come, different areas of interest from our students would come speak to our kiddos, and any of them could come. And I say kiddos loosely, they're 9th through 12th graders. So any of them could come learn about these potential careers. A lot of them have training that they will provide for them. And they will talk about salary, they will talk about education, they will talk about a lot of the life skills that we teach, like showing up to work on time, which we try to teach as well, like showing up to class on time. But it's different when a business comes and talks to them. So these are some things that I think the library is so crucial, because you have the resources, you have the knowledge, you have others in the community that know about the jobs that we have in our area. So what a perfect partnership with a school and a library.
I think that's really impactful, and that you say that. I think of many districts who do not have a foundation like Jinx, and to say that libraries are a perfect partner. I think that some of our library partners in particular are positioned to sort of act as sort of that foundation for a lot of districts, and sort of just the hub that connects. Many of your libraries are connected with business leaders and nonprofits and philanthropies and all sorts of things, and probably have a list of organizations that are good and that are safe to work through. So it'd be nice to have a partner that can really kind of vet through those options. So I think that is a very good piece of advice for both libraries and districts to be able to connect. Thank you for that. Hey, I'll pass it to you, Dr. Raleigh, if you can do the same.
Well, and I'll reiterate a lot of what Dr. Hudson said. There are challenges. You have to know your community. You have to work through your community. And she mentioned earlier, the systematic approach. We start in the early grades, and we really do try to focus on, just even if it's in our pre-K through 2nd grade, maybe we're doing something maybe every semester where we do a career focus kind of event. And it's one of our district goals that we have those in each one of our buildings. But we try to set up checkpoints. And at the 3rd grade, in something maybe libraries could actually be the lead on, our chamber in 1999 started 3rd graders go to work. And what they did is they created a program in which they partnered 3rd grade classrooms all over Mays County. It's not just in Pryor, it's in the entire county, with businesses. And it could be the John Deere dealer, it could be the bank, an insurance company, a library, whatever. And it could be the library that's actually driving this, because you're making an awareness of what's going on. But we would pair together, and we would just select a grade or a classroom with a business. That business would come into the classroom, tell them about everything that they do at the bank or at the John Deere dealer or whatever. And the kids then would have a curriculum that they kind of work through, looking at what that job looks like. So if it's the John Deere dealer, it may be about agriculture and farming and why you need these different tractors and things. If it's banking, we have one, I think Edward Jones, they actually do stocks. And the kids follow those stocks. And then when they later on, after a couple of weeks of going through the curriculum, and doing the research, they actually make a visit to that business. So it's a half day kind of thing. Typically, the business is buying some pizza, lunch, or things like that. And it is remarkable what has happened with those businesses. They become ingrained and really partner with those schools, and they go very elaborate. Mid-America did a full lollipop factory, and they started from acquisition of equipment to materials to payroll and everything else. At the bank, the kids got to write a check, and they got an actual dollar when they cashed it and got to fill out the check piece and all that. So, I mean, it could be that the library is either a component of that, where they're actually going and learning what a library is like and how it works and all of that, or it could be the library being the hub and focal point of the community could actually drive something like that and create the event and be the connecting liaison between all these different entities in a smaller town that maybe doesn't have a chamber, or maybe the chamber and the library can partner in something like that. Then we go to the 6th grade, and we have another checkpoint called BizTown. Really great opportunity in the Tulsa area. I think they have maybe in the Oklahoma City area, in which kids at the 5th, 6th grade level, we do it at the 6th. Our kids all have to fill out applications. They have to go through a job interview. So once again, now we're bringing in community leaders. We're bringing in the mayor and the bank president and different people, and they interview. Every year I do interviews, and my staff do interviews with these kids. I've had some of the best interviews I've ever had for 6th graders. I mean, they come in, look you in the eye, shake the hand, the whole process. So those are ways that you can also get your community involved there. And those connections we make, they're always willing to come do that. That's just a level of communication, maybe now that we have somebody that we can engage at a different level in a different way. And then, of course, working up to the high school, now we get into, as she talked about, bringing in speakers. And we do that, pretty well through the group. We talk about plant tours or business tours and things of that nature. Our chamber forum, we've had our kids present a number of times. We've had our college career coordinator present. When we started our internship program, that's a heavy lift. It takes a lot of communication and a lot of networking, and you have to really work with this because you're bringing a kid into the business, and they've got to work in that business, and there's attendance, and what are they doing, and we got OSHA and HIPAA and every kind of thing to worry about. So there's a lot of pieces of that. So we've been a part of those chamber forum meetings. We just look for ways that we can get our message out there that, look, this is a way for our kids to have a next connection. We want them to graduate on Friday night and know what they're going to do on Monday. Well, if that's going to happen, we have to do our job as a community, as a school district, and including the libraries in this, as a way to create as many career exposures as we can so they know what's out there. And that path may be college, it may be career tech, it may be just getting a certification. We need to be able to understand and show them what that multiple on-ramp, off-ramp looks like, and have them do the research and follow up and really have that plan. And that takes us all working together.
Sure. Thank you for that. Perfect. And perfect examples from both of you all. So I want to switch focus to family engagement, which is extremely important in this work. Both of you know very well that for students to be able to continue the conversations that take place at school and continue that planning process, that family does have to be a part of that conversation. And for many families, it may have been years before they've even had this conversation about college and career readiness, or maybe they've not had the conversation at all. How do you all see the library being in a part of family engagement for your students?
Well, I definitely think the library is a place where people go, right? It's a place where you go check out books. There may be different meetings or conferences. It's a safe space. And I definitely think, as we grow and mature, sometimes the school is not open, right? It might be the summertime and my counselors may not be available. But guess what? The public library is open and there are research tools and there's somebody there to ask those questions. So I think as a district, we are trying to provide avenues for students to have these resources throughout the year and in the summer. But again, sometimes it's just nice to have a person to ask some of those questions to. And having tools and resources available, which I know, We have free tools that students can use and use as resources. But you know, every time I go to the library, there's so many pieces of information, right? There's flyers everywhere on career tech. Here's college. Have you thought about this? And those always grab my attention, not because I want to do something different, because it makes me question, you know, wow, look at all of these opportunities that our kids have. And so I definitely think that, again, it's another place. We know that with all of this, with our planning for the future, it's a trusted adult, right? Those connections with somebody else, and all it takes is asking those questions. You know, how did you get where you are? How did you decide this was the path that you wanted to take? They may not have the same journey as you, but it makes you start asking questions. And then if they ask you a question, hey, what are you interested in? What would you like to do? Then again, we can help. Oh, gosh, I know somebody here. Somebody comes in and checks out books, or there's this business down the street. You know, have you talked about this option? And so I think it's just, again, it's a safe place for people to go. There's a lot of resource tools. There's technology available. And so how can we use this place as another launching pad, perhaps on the weekends, in the summers, when school may not be in session and you're not readily accessible to a school counselor?
And I like that. I like that emphasis on in the summers. We know that several of your graduates will experience some sort of summer melt. And so having the libraries as a space to help combat that and is extremely important. And so just to provide context, summer melt refers to high school seniors who may have already been accepted to a college or a post-secondary program, but begin to lose some sort of support is definitely one of them, but sort of that momentum to keep going. That's where you see students who may not show up to their advising appointments to enroll in the courses or even complete their FAFSA. And one of the big things is that their support system has changed. They're no longer in school where a counselor or a teacher is there to readily support them and answer questions. And it's not that, you know, mom and dad or whoever is not helpful. It's they may not know. And they may not have the resources to continue that conversation. And so another perfect example of how a library can help just to combat summer melt and just to know the language is important. So for any of the libraries listening, that's important to know the language and the context behind that is to ask, and, you know, maybe I can't do much, but maybe summer hours really aren't that busy, and I can help with your graduating seniors who still need the necessary supports to keep going in that next step. And so that's huge for so many students, and that's true across the country. So thank you for that. I think that's a really good point in terms of summer supports for our students. Dr. Raleigh.
Well, I think your question is about, you know, how do we get community or families, I guess, engaged and use the library in that way. I can remember it very early in my own career, just back when I was in elementaries, we would go in the summer and we would go in the evenings, and my parents kind of advocated us reading. So it's a perfect place for us to start early. We realize we can't be a junior or a senior and all of a sudden trying to figure out what we're going to do. That conversation with a parent needs to really start at an early age, and that's a perfect connection. In our community right now, our library is leading the census charge. The librarian's actually the person in charge for our entire county, and she's been working with us and sending out stuff, and they're doing activities all the time. We have a partnership between our school libraries and our public libraries, so they're always interacting. But I think there's an opportunity really for a focal point, you know, on with what do you want to be when you grow up? You know, having a spotlight center over in a corner for, you know, all the different jobs that are available, and that could be in all kinds of age group readings, where you have kids that come in and I want to be a fireman, or I want to be a scientist, I want to be whatever that is. What's an astronaut? I think you just continue to expose them to as many different things through books and through the library things. And libraries now are evolving into maker spaces, different things like that. So there's STEM opportunities there. Just trying to create curiosity and continue to pique that interest. I think that's a vital piece. You know, we've been doing for a decade now, the Leader in Me, which is a character-based program, kind of leadership and character. When we had conversations with the plant managers and the folks out there, they're talking about 21st century skills, which is showing up on time, not being on your phone when you're not supposed to, taking the adequate time for lunch, being able to work with others, being able to pass a drug test. To me, that's character and leadership. And I don't care if it's Leader in Me or Great Expectations. A character program is another piece of learning those employment skills. And that could be a focal point for a library on, you know, here's an area that you're going to talk about those employability skills and how to Dale Carnegie stuff and different leadership books and things like that for maybe the older kids, how to win friends and influence people, all the different kinds of books, the 7 Habits from Stephen Covey. There can be some character and leadership pieces that the library brings out and shares during the summer. Trust me, those pieces are going to weigh and carry kids, especially as they start talking and moving forward into employment. I think, you know, having an end in mind and knowing what you want to be and focusing on that, I think there's a ton of ways that your parents can get involved for guiding their students in the library to figure out what those careers might look like and what they may want to be when they grow up.
Gosh, Dr. Raleigh, I kind of think if they had those for educators, we might all line up too, right?
Yes.
I'm getting excited about going to my public library right now.
Yes.
Very true. And you bring up a great point, both of you, Dr. Riley, Dr. Hudson, is that I think that, you know, libraries have changed so much over the years. I can think back to when I was in elementary school. It wasn't atypical to see, you know, programs for kids my age and, you know, the reading times and things like that. All of those things were available, but I can't really recall seeing older students engaged. You know, maybe it was parents, you know, that were there and, you know, for our scheduled activities. And that still happens now, you know, in the library. But if you've ever stepped into libraries nowadays, there are study times for students. There are the maker spaces, the STEM labs. You know, I've just been so impressed by the opportunities that these students have to touch and feel and experience different things connected to careers. Many of our libraries actually are connected to our 100 critical occupations list in the state of Oklahoma. And so for those that aren't aware, there's a list that is open from oklahomaworks.gov that lists the 100 critical occupations needed to move our state forward. And many of our libraries begin to purchase books and materials and make sure that they intentionally have STEM spaces that allow students to get exposed to those careers at an early age. And so we know that in education that many students may be very capable of careers, but they just don't know what's out there. And if they've not been exposed to them as long as someone else, and they have a pretty big disadvantage of even going into STEM or, you know, health science or any other field. And so libraries can really serve as that space to provide equity for a lot of our students and families and to have conversations and allow them to have exposure to things that they may not otherwise have. And so I'm, of course, you know, libraries are big community partners, but I think in those terms for educators to think of is that they really can serve as a very helpful partner in this work as well. So I've been excited to see that. It's perfect transition to a next question is sort of the civic engagement that takes place when students are just connected to their communities in general. One of our requirements for ICAP is work-based learning or in-service learning environment. And so that may mean a community project of some sort, or, you know, some sort of volunteerism that a student may participate in that is somewhat connected to their career goal. So you think of libraries as being a natural place for that to take place, for, you know, them to be connected to community projects and, you know, maybe something with the mayor or, you know, other things. Can you all think of, or maybe have some examples of programs you have currently that might be great connections to a library, maybe to kind of give our librarians and our educators on the call some ideas? And that's open to anyone. So anybody who jumps first.
I might jump on this one quickly. We have a week in our community called Great Days of Service, and that's faith-based organizations, civic organizations. Libraries would certainly fit into that, chambers and different groups like that, in which they kind of basically, this is a chance for us to give back to our community, clean up our community. There's Main Street projects, there's painting projects, things like that. We have a component in our 8th grade, which we usually in that time period, our football teams or our 8th grade kids have a chance to earn the right to go to Washington, D.C. They have to do their attendance, grades, and their discipline, but they have to earn 15 hours of community service as well. We do a food drive at the same time. They leave sacks out, and then people put their in their mailboxes, and then on Saturday mornings they leave it out at the curb, and the football teams or the 8th grade groups, they all go around and pick up the food and then do the food service. They clean up houses, they clean up flower beds for groups. We've actually had projects here at the school for them to take care of. So, I mean, I think anytime that you're driving something like that, that creates that community awareness, I think that, you know, the library could certainly be the focal point, just like ours is being the census leader here. There's no question that the libraries are a hub piece that you could maybe do some things of that nature. I think that's one possible example.
I'd just like to follow up on the community service and volunteering. We have students who strive every year to be a distinguished service graduate, and service is a huge part of that. And so working in a library is so huge. It's amazing how the connection of when you bring your children to the library and they see a middle school or high school student there, handing out the stickers or talking to the kids or engaging with them in an activity, how different that interaction is. And then how important those kids feel. This is someone that they can look up to. So definitely being a part of that volunteer program, but other things in our community. I know we have a huge food bank, a food drive across our whole district. Well, why not let the information go to our libraries as well? You know, don't forget we're supporting our own local food bank, which supports our families in our community. Just because, again, some of the families may not know that that is a resource for them, so they could utilize it both ways. And then I think our high school student council does a huge drive every year, and our kids will donate thousands of dollars. I'm amazed every year when they come together with a need that is student derived. It's not the adults saying, hey, we should do this. It is the kids, just what things can change and what things can happen. And every year, our students always surpass our goals. So I think, why not get the community involved? Why not talk to our chamber, talk to our libraries? What else can we do to help serve our own? And I love that week of volunteerism. That's amazing for the community to come together. So my idea is, I'm kind of thinking through different things here too, but the more that we can have our students connect with our towns, our communities, and them to feel valuable and purposeful and want to come back, right? It helps everybody.
Marissa, I might follow up real quick. I think you just hit a very key piece, Amy, is that you have to have, it always comes down to people, and you have to have someone to own some of these projects because they're heavy lifts. I mean, there's a lot of work involved in some of these things to do them right. Third graders go to work, a week of Great Days of Service, or any of these different things, internships. So if you've got a library that's willing to be the focal point and willing to step out on any one of these kind of projects, I think it transforms kind of what's happening in the community. And it is a lot of work. But it also becomes even more of a fabric of the community where they're actually driving initiatives and being a part of things that really increase and enhance what the chances are for our kids to be successful going forward. So, you know, I applaud everyone that's willing to even think about doing anything as the focal point of a community, and library is a public service as far as I'm concerned. I actually attribute most of my being an educator to the fact I was a reader and grew up, you know, my parents, we were always pushing my mom and dad, let's go to the library. So I think there's an opportunity here to rethink, and we're rebuilding libraries and we're changing what those spaces look like. The same thing in the paradigm of what libraries can be in the community is maybe that's a rethink of that paradigm.
And as we think through this whole ICAP process and wanting to get our kids out in the public, you're right. It is very challenging. And as an educator, we might not ask. And it's not because we don't want you, we want you.
Yeah.
It may just because we have other things that we're working on too. And
Sure.
so if you are a librarian out there and you're like, gosh, my school hasn't asked, call them. You know, reach out to them and say, gosh, I want to be part of this ICAP program that I'm hearing about. And maybe not just for the high school kids, but you know, that other group, those ones that have recently graduated or still trying to figure out, or maybe they want another step or another journey.
Sure.
Let's find a way to reach out. We all want the same thing, and that's the success of our community. And working together. So that's my encouragement. It's not because we don't want you.
Yes.
You might just have few things going on, and we do want you.
I think that's such a great point. I just in preparation of this meeting, I reached out to some school districts just to sort of learn how they engage with their libraries. And one district in particular, I believe it might be Noble Public Schools. Each of their teachers are given the opportunity to get a library card. And so that gives them the opportunity to always constantly be aware of services that are available. There are some districts who use the libraries, I guess their information systems, so their research journals as well. And so that's, very big for a lot of districts because that's a pretty big commitment to be able to do that and offer that for students as well. And so, so there are some partnerships that even span beyond ICAP or college and career readiness, but you're right. I mean, those things would not have happened without conversations as well. I also, going back to, those safety nets for students is, my own personal story. I was able to go on to college and run track and was able to be successful in high school for track. But one of the biggest barriers for me is I didn't have internet access in my home. So to complete the necessary applications that were now very much transitioning to all online, 2005, that was it. No more paper really for a lot of them. And to fill out, FAFSA was still paper. Oklahoma's Promise, of course, still paper, but moving towards college applications or even the Publisher Clearinghouse, which is an organization that is required for a student to even be thought of as a student athlete. And so here I was with scholarship dollars waiting on me, but this huge barrier in between because I did not have internet access to be able to complete the application. And so a school was at the time did have a little limited internet access and those things, but that was something that was, embarrassing to me to admit as a young student that I did not have those resources available. And so I would have rather almost done without to not feel like I was less than with the rest of the students. And that was 20 years ago, for me, but I don't think that there are other students that are not in those similar situations. And so when you're talking about a safe space and a place where students can go and it's natural to have these conversations and to do that, what my life would have been if I would have allowed for something so trivial to stand in the way. And I think that that's the case for a lot of kids. Where something not having, internet access, so my papers aren't as great, or scholarship opportunity, just, that's a barrier. I don't have that, so I'm just gonna, do without it. And schools having limited access to internet or computer labs themselves. So there's only so much sometimes that even schools are able to do. And so I applaud our libraries and those of you who are on the call today to learn about ways that you can help. I just want to share just a few statistics for you while we're here, is that about 77% of jobs in Oklahoma will require some form of education beyond high school in the coming years. Currently, just a little bit less than half, about 46%, I believe, of adults 25 and older have a high school diploma or less. So nearly half, 1 in 2 adults 25 and older. And so when we think about where our state itself is moving in terms of demand in careers and demand in education. We also have to think about that 25 age range probably represent our parents of our students, which means about half of our students going into post-secondary are probably first generation college or career tech or post-secondary students. So what that means is that while of course mom and dad want better for their students and want to be able to support them, they have not had that personal experience of what it's like and the expectations needed to complete an application, follow up, and complete financial aid applications as well. And so if you're thinking about ways that you can help students and thinking about ways to eliminate just these very simple barriers that may mean huge for students, but it could be nothing for you to take out of their way. It means a lot for students, for their families, and of course our overall state economy as well. So if you thinking about some ideas, I would encourage, of course, you to reach out to your schools. I know that Allison, you had a couple of questions maybe on the card. If you want to sort of do an open call round robin, if we haven't already addressed those, but I do want to give you an opportunity to ask those questions on behalf of maybe some of the libraries.
Yeah, so I just have to say I am so inspired now by what you guys have done. You've really kind of made me think of different ways. So a question that I have, a lot of you have talked about different businesses that you have gotten involved. So initially, were they quick to jump on board? Did you have any, trouble getting any participation? And how did that initial conversation go to get community leaders, companies, people like that on board?
I guess I'll jump in first then. It's grassroots, it's granular, it's networking, it's trust. One of our paradigms we work off in our district and we talk about is trust all the time, is you have to build relationships with people. And we use the chamber forums as an example of an opportunity to present. Like I said, libraries and chambers and those connections, sometimes it's just an email network and say, we're going to do this. This is a way for you to be giving back to our kids and helping us, plant career experiences for our students. It takes work. It's a lot of cultivating experiences. And if you're talking about a third graders go to work, it could be for a short period of time. That maybe this is a 3 weeks to a month and a half type experience where you first come in and talk, and then you have your planning meetings, and you visit a class, and then all of that, and then you go experience it. That may be a short piece. We're talking an internship, which is really a much different level. You've got to have a constant communication, and we try to make it as easy on the businesses and that folks that we're working with as possible. We expect the students to lead. They're going to have a time clock or a check-in. They're going to have their own journaling they have to do and what their experiences were. The only thing we're going to hopefully ask is that, some initial paperwork with them to make sure we're in a good place, and then attendance and follow up weekly and say, they were here the whole time or whatever. We expect our students to call in just like they're an employee. If they're not going to be there, they've got to call in and be accountable. Those kinds of things. And if a student is out there, we use the junior JA BizTown. We have business leaders come in and talk to all of our interns before they ever go out. Here's expectations. This is what we're going to do. I very clearly say that you're representing me and our district when you're out in these environments. And you're not only, yourself and what you're potentially going to be able to do and what the experiences you're getting, but you're carrying the prior public schools and all of us that are involved behind this and the relationships we have with these people. If you go out there and you're not going to do what you need to do, then that's a challenge for us and a problem, and it actually hurts and damages our trust for them to come back with somebody else later on. So it's a pretty big burden that we're going to put on those kids and talk to them about what we're expecting from them. But it's a burden for those businesses. I mean, having a dental office come in and have them shadow and follow and be a part of that is a tremendous experience. But that's a challenge still. I mean, they've got to be there and, work with them and all that. And that's not an easy thing to do in some of these experiences. I will say, though, the reward of this, and we had a kid that wanted to be a pharmacist. He was going to Southwestern. He was going to be a pharmacy student. It was locked in. Turns out he goes 2 weeks into the pharmacy, though, and comes back to our career advisor and says, Mr. Day, I hate this. I can't do this. I don't want to be a pharmacist. And we're all like, yes, this is great. And he's apologized. And he said, what do you mean? He said, no, we saved you and you saved yourself a lot of time and money because it might have been 3 years into your experience before you even went and worked one. So we changed gears and he got a different experience. That is invaluable for that child and that student. Wouldn't have happened if that pharmacist wasn't willing to go through that process. And then when he figured out it wouldn't work, he was okay with it. He was glad too. And we placed him somewhere else and brought another student in. So it's a long ongoing process. And some people say, I want to do this, and they realize what it takes. It's a little tougher than you think.
I think it's also understanding how much time commitment our business leaders are able to give us, right? Is it I want to come to a 3rd grade classroom and talk for about 15 to 20 minutes? That's perfect. Is it something where I can commit to having an intern in my program and have them become a part of our staff? That's great too. And so I think it's understanding where each business owner is. And I think that takes communication. That takes understanding their needs and our student needs. But you're right, Dr. Raleigh, we've had kids in the same situation. They wanted to be an engineer. And some of them have excelled in that program and are focused. Others have gone, nope, I thought this is what I wanted to do. And now I want to switch gears. I want to do something else. And you're right, we consider that a win also. Because again, it's a learning opportunity. We're learning and growing, but you're right. I think reinforcing that you are representing the district. Not everybody gets to go do this. Like if you are having some issues with a student, like we will pull them back on campus. And so that clear communication and that trust, like Dr. Raleigh mentioned, it takes that, and that's what makes a program really successful.
I thought those were both great answers. Okay, my next question is, so you guys have just completed the 1st year of ICAP. So since that, what changes have you noticed in your staff, students, and their parents, if any?
I think it's also asking questions, right? So we are going to look at everything from every aspect, right? The curriculum that we used, the questions that our students had, and if something wasn't as engaging, guess what? We're going to come back to the drawing board. We're going to figure it out and move forward. So, but what I think what we have seen this year is those increased conversations. Again, they've been a part of our culture for a while, but now I can really see that it's moving forward. Our kids are looking at the classes that they've taken, or maybe their interest inventories. And if you're really excited about something and this is what your interest is, then take some classes. Let's try it. You have nothing to lose. And so planning and preparing for that. My own daughter was kind of in this situation. And so this summer, she's like, Mom, I love art. I love art. I want to take art. It's kind of hard to do art when you have a foreign language, maybe a sport, and different requirements. So we found a way for her to take a class this summer so that she can get what she loves, right? This is my own child. It's the same. We have them in our buildings everywhere. So it's those conversations on what is it that drives you? What is it that you're going to be so excited about? Let's find a way to make that happen while you're in high school, because a lot of these experiences here will help you in college or your career or career tech, so that you'll know the direction and the focus. And so again, I think it's those conversations, those purposeful conversations, that time with your advisory teacher or just a teacher, right? A counselor, somebody that our kids connect with, that they trust and that they value. It's kind of like, I remember my mom would tell me things over and over again, right? And I love my mom. But when somebody else who believed in me and encouraged me said the same kind of thing, guess what? Like, I really took it to heart. And so, like, Mom has to say that about me, right? Shouldn't have a choice. So I think it's the same thing with this, the ICAP conversations, the classes, the courses, those intentional conversations that we have with our students. It's somebody else, one other person coming alongside them, having that conversation with them and helping them plan and prepare for their future.
Dr. Hudson, we call that the definition of an expert, someone from out of town or someone else. We also say, or someone wearing the Google shirt when they walk into our classrooms, because that seems to get our kids' attention. But you're right. I mean, it's having someone else affirm that or give that input really makes a difference. I'll say that it's been, as we were a pilot along with Jinx and others, and we've learned every year. We've scrapped our books and how we were doing it, our procedure books, and we went this program and process first, and then we evolved it. Our approach with our teachers. I agree completely that our staff has taken it more. I mean, it's a paradigm. We've published it. We call it our Tiger Tenets, as we have the academic, character, and leadership, and then the career pathway piece. We publish it. Our chamber hands out flyers with it and everything else. It's become about what we're about, and it's, in fact, you have to do anything you do in the district has to fit in those three paradigms. That's just the way it works. And so I think in our awareness with our staff, awareness with our parents has really increased. We've done a lot of community activities in America, with our local chambers, with just events in Main Street. Pretty well now, anytime someone wants something done in the community, they'll call our high school leadership teams, or they'll call Thunderbird. It's usually those two groups, and they know we're going to step up and step in. But I think it's really changed the lens for our staff, whereas they're teaching, we've asked them to look for ways to enhance, as you're reading literature, or you're seeing it, bring out what that career looks like, and maybe talk about it briefly. It doesn't take a lot if you're talking about, even from early childhood, and you're reading a book and you see something there, you can talk about, well, what's it take to be a fireman? What's it take to be a scientist? You can have that quick conversation. If you're doing that vertically as a student moves through the district, just like it just becomes a part of what they're always thinking about, maybe what they're going to be. So I think it's changed our approach a little bit, and it's continuing to evolve, and we hope to become where it's a fabric of what we're about, and we continue to drive it.
Okay, so Marissa, you had mentioned earlier that Oklahoma is fortunate that all 77 counties are represented by at least one public library, which is just amazing. So maybe for more of the school districts that don't have the resources, maybe in more rural areas, how can public libraries really step in and help the schools and fill that void?
Sure, that's a great question. I think it goes back to some of our previous points and speaking about, I think Dr. Hudson was talking about their foundation that they have. One of the biggest recommendations we have for students in implementing ICAP is to assemble sort of an ICAP leadership team. That team could include at least one teacher, a counselor, maybe a parent, basically all of the stakeholders that stand to gain or would be a part of the ICAP implementation process. Many of our school districts have taken that to heart, but have also included a community partner or a business and industry leader as well. And I think that for those districts who are maybe rural, maybe they're not in the library's backyard, they can still benefit from that library leader's knowledge of the community around them. And so, like Dr. Raleigh mentioned, they are public service offices. They are still public service based. And so being able to connect them to business leaders that might be a little closer to them, or community projects that are on the list to be done, but we haven't been able to put together a team to execute this project. And so now a school district has a list of in-service learning opportunities for a student to choose from, rather than trying to create one on their own. Or, of course, just having a voice at the city level, or the county level, depending upon what library system you have. And, of course, that education piece, understanding that many of your libraries are part of a sort of a regional organization. So maybe your library might be particularly small, but they're a part of a regional organization or a regional group that has 7 different branches. So it multiplies your reach in terms of professionals sort of in this space. And so I think that making that connection to someone who, in the library, who just has natural knowledge in this space, in the community, and can answer questions really quickly and make connections very quickly, I can think of no better need for someone at the district or maybe even a site level that would just need, I just need a 5 seconds, 3, names that come off the top of your head to help me, execute this or to help me provide opportunities for students. And so I think just kind of having that additional contact would be very helpful for our districts.
Okay, that's awesome. Well, those are all the questions that I have. Before we wrap up, do you guys have any final thoughts that you would like to share? Anything that, as we've been discussing, just, popped into your head that you would like our librarians to know?
I'll say that just one place that I think that if you're libraries and you're trying to think of how do I get connected, we have a website that is a one-stop shop for all things ICAP, college and career readiness, or business and community. And that website is www.okedge.com. So www.okedge.com. If you go to that site, you'll be able to see success stories, examples of districts who have implemented ICAP in a number of ways, how districts are able to reach out to community partners like yourselves, or in turn, how you can reach out to school districts, different examples of how you might serve with the school district. So some sort of concrete examples of what that has been able to help accomplish for a school district. And then, of course, my contact information as well. So if you're unsure about who to contact in your school districts as well, I'm happy to be a resource also.
Okay, well, if that is all, I want to thank you all so much for presenting. This has been very educational. And to all of you watching, I want to thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this session, I would encourage you to watch the other sessions from the Public Library Division and go ahead and get involved in our division. And finally, please remember to complete a session evaluation on the OLA Conference app. And we hope that you will join us for many more conference sessions.